Ding 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 ding.
Fubble Time.
Hi, I am Teresa Tomey.
And I am Patrick Ziegler.
And we are.
Fubble Entertainment.
And this is.
Fubble Time.
I'm going to think about John Philbin laughing
know.
about that every time.
But I did it right.
You always do it right. It always feels a little. It reminds me of that Bugs Bunny cartoon where they go dun 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 dun, where it just almost isn't right.
I want to know if anybody remembers that cartoon.
It's the
so I'm gonna write hello.
And who's here? Please check in if you want. While he is doing that, I am going to share a little bit about our next guest.
Yay!
Koyalee Chanda is a creative executive and a 7-time Emmy-nominated producer and director, starting her career on the breakthrough preschool series Blue's Clues when she began directing at age 23. What?
Amazing.
I know. She's just a dynamo. Well, Koyalee is currently a VP of Kids and Animation at Reese Witherspoon's media company, Hello Sunshine. Great name. Prior to this role, she's done stints at Netflix Animation and Apple. As a production and creative executive, she was a creative and development consultant. She worked with top kids networks, including HBO Kids and Family, Nickelodeon, Universal Kids, PBS Kids. Previous projects include Wallykazam, Odd Squad with PBS Kids. She was producer and director of on-air and off-air content for Sesame Street, Backyardigans, certainly Blue's Clues. She, of course, was part of Come On Over.
Which I think she directed at least 4 episodes, maybe more than that, at least.
Oh, yeah. There you go. She is a proud graduate of Wesleyan University, and she holds a directing certificate from NYU. So without further ado, Koyalee. There she is.
Hi, guys. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh my gosh.
So great. Hi, Emil. Emil's here with us today, too. How are you, Koyalee? It's so great to have you with us.
Oh my God. It's such a thrill to be here. Working on Come On Over was like just this like bright shining light in the middle of Michigan. And we just did so much with so little. So I'm just so proud to be a part of that show.
It was funny when we tried to pitch it. I remember going into I remember we pitched it to Al Roker's company or something because they were looking at buying it or something. And we walked in and he was like, "What's your budget?" And we gave him the budget and he was like, "Yeah." Like, because it was such a small budget. And we showed him the content. He was like, "How did you do that with that little money?" It's like West Michigan, we got Goshen. We
hired good people like Koyalee.
Oh, well, it was just, the way you use the community and everything is just like, everyone was just really on board. I can hear my dog scratching on the door.
Oh,
does he need to be let in?
No, she's fine.
Mine do that sometimes, but mine are sleeping right now. What I'm thinking of, Koyalee, you were so wonderful with the cast and crew. You were so nurturing and teaching. And Lisa had mentioned that about Come On Over, that we were able to use, people like Nate Schramm, who was just in high school going into college, and now he's an executive at Nickelodeon. But you were so wonderful in that way. And we also brought in a new character during that time, Jessica Camacho, playing Joy. And you did such a great job with her as well. And just really appreciate. I'm trying to remember how I'm jumping ahead.
You're way ahead, dude. You haven't even asked our first question yet.
I know. So we'll go back to that. So our first question that we always ask our guests is, where, when, how do you remember getting bitten by the creative bug?
Such a great question. So I'm going to take it way back. Because I was about 8 years old.
Oh.
And which is sort of interesting because I actually have an 8-year-old who lives in my home right now.
Aw.
And
Who happens to
I
belong
was-
to you.
who happens to be my daughter. And she, like me at that age, was obsessed with stuffed animals. And so I had tons and tons and tons of stuffed animals. And then on the weekends, I would like pull all the books off the bookshelves and turn all the milk crates over on the side and create little stuffed animal apartments
Oh, fun.
in my room. And I would just play out these scenarios where like, and each stuffed animal had a job in animal world. And like, and you know, there was a raccoon who sold women's clothing, Randy. It was like Barbie
Randy?
clothing. Yeah, Randy the raccoon. But he was also into Van Halen. Like he was a drummer too. But so he like sold women's clothing, which was
Oh my
Barbie clothing, like
gosh.
hung up on the side. And then also just like jammed out to like Van Halen. He had like these little stubby arms and we'd be like, I mean, it's just like so bananas. But they would be like actual I would play out these stories and dramas and comedies with my stuffed animals, and they each had their own personalities and different voices. And I'm sure my parents were really worried.
Were you,
Honestly, like,
remind me, are you an only child?
no,
Really?
I know. Sounds like I was,
No,
but I wasn't.
Where are you in the food chain?
I am the youngest of two. My older
Okay.
brother
Okay,
is
that's
3.5
right. I thought
years
you had a
older.
brother.
Yeah.
Okay.
And he's in the financial world.
Okay.
And I went into this like a real creative streak too, but those were not the choices he made for his career. Whereas I went from, making stuffed animals talk to directing Muppets, like in my adult life, which is like just like this crazy snapshot of these two moments in time. Who knew?
That one would foreshadow the other in such a way.
Yeah.
I remember
exactly.
you sharing that. It's funny because I remember because I was the youngest of four, and you're making my brain go, oh, that sounds like my childhood, because I had a very playful. I had lots of stuffed animals. I didn't have a raccoon that sold women's clothing, but I
love that. So that listen to Van Halen.
Listen to Van Halen.
So
random. But I remember when I'd say to my mom, I'm bored, she would say, you're only, it's your fault. If you're bored, it's your fault. Go do something. Like, I'm not here to entertain you. I didn't birth you to entertain you. Go figure it out. So I was forced to play a lot by myself, which was such a gift in the long run.
It's so interesting because I think about that a lot as a parent now, because, we don't really allow our kids, like when I say we, I don't mean me specifically, but I think as a culture, we may not allow our kids to get bored enough. And actually because like, also there's so many ways to not be bored, like the screens are so available and there's always something to interact with. And so there isn't a ton of just sort of like staring at the window time. Like even actually, like I remember, even car rides. I mean, you guys remember long car rides, just staring out the window. And now, both my kids get car sick actually. So they can't watch screens. And in some ways, like it's kind of a gift because like they're staring out the window for car rides. And like, that's kind of like, it's a sort of a mixed blessing that they can't watch because it makes them nauseous. And so they,
how
do you play do you do the license plate game?
Yeah. All that stuff.
All
like
that
license
stuff.
plate.
I Spy.
I Spy in a moving car is very, very
It
challenging.
is difficult. Yes. This is true.
But it's just a way to
did you
get that. Yeah.
Well,
so did you go ahead, Teresa.
I was just going to say, because you're talking about your children, it's funny because in our list of questions, we wanted to talk about your kids. So I'm going to we usually kind of go chronologically a little bit to try to figure out.
She's going rogue.
I'm going rogue. I'm going
Watch
rogue
out.
on the questions. I'm going to jump to the end because I think it's interesting. I want to spend just a little bit more time on your kids. And I wrote, how about I said, do kids have enough creative opportunities these days? Are you seeing that? And that was one of our questions.
I mean, I think that, I worry that they don't, I worry that there's not enough sort of down time and unstructured time to find your own fun, and to make something out of nothing. I wish that I kind of wish that I mean, we're always learning, right? All of us as humans are always learning. I wish that we could all make more space to just have downtime, to have those creative moments. I think that there's like one thing that is actually interesting. Our kids have gotten into drawing on the iPad. So even though it's screen time, they're really actually being pretty creative. And so I'm sort of trying to make myself feel good about the fact that even though it is technically screen time, like they're doing creative things, and that's good.
Yeah.
But there's also, I will notice that, and maybe this is not exactly the question, but there is a much more sophisticated view on content now, because kids are really witnessing homemade generated content all the time. Like,
oh, sure. Yeah.
You know, with YouTube. And I mean, I even noticed with my 8-year-old, I feel like she narrates what she's doing a lot, because she's used to like hearing YouTubers being like, and then you take this and then you go that, and you got to make sure you pour it really carefully. So it's like almost like she's like a walking YouTube channel. And I just think that there is actually and maybe this is me making myself feel a little better, but kids are so much more aware of what it takes to create content, whether it's TikTok, YouTube, whatever. It's like they're seeing people like them creating content, and they essentially have access to a little TV studio all the time. So it's kind of so maybe they are not making origami or like making flip books by hand, but they are being creative in other ways. They're video editing, they're doing stop motion, they're drawing on Procreate. Like it's actually, there are all these other tools. So GarageBand, you know, like there are these tools that kids can use to be creative. It's just not the way that like the three of us maybe remember being creative as a kid, you know?
Right.
Well, it's ever changing. Even, you know, when we were kids, the things that we did, our parents didn't do. So if people can keep open to that, I love that you said making something out of nothing, because we did a whole episode about a big empty box on Come On Over, and there was a song called Making Something Out of Nothing.
There you go.
And even, you know, you might have a device, you might have the things to do it, but still you have to come up with that. You have to create, you have to imagine, right?
Yeah.
So kids are doing that. Going back to your how you got into directing, in high school, did you I mean, you directed these stuffed animals. Did you do things like that in high school before you went to college? Did you do any of that kind of stuff?
The one thing I did do was actually around the same time that the stuffed animal apartment situation was going down. I also randomly wrote a play in 3rd grade.
Oh my gosh.
I had a typewriter.
You still
My parents
have
had no, I have no idea where it is.
Oh, okay.
Because it was on typewriter. Like I just like had this like old typewriter, and like, God, I'm so old. And like just like typed out this play, and I brought it to my teacher, and she was like, "Wait, you wrote this?" It's kind of crazy. And then we performed it, like, and I got to direct it. And I was the only one off book because I wrote it. Everybody else had their scripts. But we did it. We did it at lunchtime in the cafetorium.
The cafetorium. Yeah.
And people came and we performed it. I don't know if it was any good. It was actually really, you guys might find this really interesting. I went to a Lutheran elementary school because the public schools in my town were not great. And so my parents sent me to this church school, this parochial school. And, my parents are Hindu. And I was like, had not really thought of religion at all. And yet I was all of a sudden sort of in this very, very religious atmosphere. And I just became like quickly, like I got on board, like quick, And so the play was, God, I'm like, this is nuts. It was called The Trials of Mary and Joseph. And it was about It was about Jesus's friends on trial after he ascended to heaven.
You wrote this in 3rd grade?
3rd grade.
Oh my gosh.
I kind of want to read it, right?
I was
Oh
going to
my
say,
gosh.
that's really fascinating.
It's so random.
We're with
and,
3rd
like,
graders.
So like the apostles were
does
on
that make
trial?
you a little worried about me? I'm a little worried about me.
It explains everything. No, it actually doesn't explain anything.
Anything.
so
Yeah. And I'm like, I went to being a Muppet director. I don't know. I think it was just
So
the idea of being creative and the Bible. Like we would read the Bible in school.
I was
and
going to say, it was your source. That was your resource. That's what you knew.
Yeah, it's stories, right?
Oh, I
It's
can't wait
stories
to
with
tell Mark
meaning.
that story. Mark is going to love that.
It's really, I mean,
Oh my
yeah.
gosh. So you did
Okay.
so you did direct.
So
you
that was
did
like
create.
yeah. But college is
then-
when I found directing.
Okay, so were you directing theater or were you directing film and television at that point?
So I went to Wesleyan, which has an amazing film program,
Right.
but I barely took a film class there. I was a full-on theater major and was stage managing and assistant stage managing and kind of worked my way up until I felt ready to direct. And I directed my first show. It was there were so many productions going on every week there was a student run production. There were 2 or 3 performance spaces at the school. It was a very, very active and hands-on theater program. So I directed my first play. It was by George C. Wolfe, and it was in my sophomore year of college.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. It was the Colored Museum, which was like a
Oh,
vignettes.
Yeah.
Really like intense. I learned a lot doing it. And I actually, in order to cast it, because it was an all Black cast, I had to really search for I had to search for a cast. It wasn't a terribly diverse theater program. And so we would traipse across campus and start chatting people up about the show and saying, hey, if you sing, maybe you want to act. And we ended up getting a lot of first-time actors. And it was like I was in that role. And it's funny, Patrick, as you were talking about at the beginning of the conversation about that the role of that kind of teacher like connection to the actors. It has always been such a central part of why I love working with creatives is I love that is just being able to like get people who've never acted before to feel comfortable in front of performing and get like people out of their skin and just like, and what was amazing about that is that because we had sort of reached into other parts of the community to get for performers, the audience also came to support their friends. So there were like people that had never stepped in foot in the theater before. And it was amazing. It just was like the most incredible array of people coming to see this play, and it was a very, very moving experience.
It's actually very public theater where George C. Wolfe took over, and was executive director with, I'm going to blank on his name, Kevin Kline. But the public was about, getting diverse, different people involved, and then people from all, diversity learned about theater that way. Oh my God, what does he say?
Kevin, our friend Kevin's joining us tonight. He was one of our guests. George C. Wolfe is huge.
He's huge.
And then did you see? Yeah.
Jeannie jumped in and said, 3rd grade, that's amazing, Koyalee. Yeah, really amazing to have that depth. I mean, that's very deep for a young child. I mean, you must carry that through. So then why did you end up going to, you went to New York. So how did you, you get into kids television? Because at some point you also get to pick up.
Because you went to NYU, right?
Well, so the NYU came later. That was just like a summer program. So Wesleyan was, I graduated from Wesleyan and really realized that if I were to, I was a theater major, I was a theater director, but if I were to be at the top of my game in theater, which of course I'm a kid of immigrants and there's no choice, but or if you're going to go do something, you have to be at the top of your game. Sort of like the unspoken rule of immigrant children.
While you're finishing that, I'll just say my husband used to always, because he knows so many Hindus, Indians, he would say when they read the Statue of Liberty, send us your tired, your poor, he was like, no. They were like, send us the elites. Send us your doctors, your lawyers.
Yeah, exactly. No, that's true. I mean, look, there's an economic piece of it too, right? It's just like the professional, educated folks were the ones who could afford to come.
Right.
But that sort of drive was always very much ingrained in our family. And so I realized that if I were to like go to New York and be at the top of my game in theater, the audience that I would be serving was a very specific one, a very elite one, frankly, and even back then, it was a long time ago, and Broadway was really expensive. And I just felt like I had always loved kids content. I'd loved Muppets. I'd loved Snoopy and Fraggles, and just like and Pixar movies, so what I really wanted to do was reach a wider audience. And so I made a shift and kind of a very conscious decision to pursue kids content. And so luckily I got my first job through a connection. I had one person that knew somebody who knew somebody, and I got an internship at a documentary film company in New York City. They couldn't afford to pay me, but they could afford to buy my lunch. So I would buy my lunch, and then I would save half the sandwich and eat it for dinner. And I was stage managing a play at night. So I was like during the day interning, and then I would like go and do this like very off Broadway show and then like take the subway back to Brooklyn at 2 a.m.
Oh yeah.
But
I've done that. Been there, done that.
You're like, why am I the only woman on the subway right now? So then
I've said that about myself every once in a while.
Yeah.
Depends on the evening.
That's so funny. But then again, like my roommate at the time was a PA on a movie, and that the production coordinator called her and said, "Hey, I'm starting to staff up for this new kids TV show. Do you know anyone who wants to work in kids TV?" And she actually said, "Do you want to work in kids TV?" And she asked my roommate. My roommate was like, "No, I don't, but my roommate Koyalee does." And so I interviewed, and it was for this show that like was just coming out or had just come on, been on air for 6 months, and it was called Blue's Clues. And they said, "Hey, like we think we're onto something here. Like the show's doing pretty well, and they want us to make more episodes." So like, and we just like the team was fairly small at the time, and so they were like, "Here's what we do." Like, and I just was like, I went all in. I was like, I watched one episode and I was like, oh my God, I get this. It is bananas. Like it was so like, it was nothing like I'd ever seen before. The pacing was like, the guy would be like, "What do you think?" And like, wait and listen. I was like, oh my God, he sees me. And like, it just like, I was like, I get why kids love this. Like,
yeah.
It's bananas, but I also can't keep my eyes off of it. And so I started as a coordinator. My boss, the woman who hired me, Wendy Harris, who's amazing. She's at 9 Story Entertainment now. She said her favorite story about that is that I said yes to the job before I found out what it paid.
Well, you were actually getting paid though.
Exactly.
Not just lunch.
I didn't tell her that at the time, but I was like, oh, right. The salary. No, I was just, yeah, exactly. I wasn't getting paid at the time. So like that, I was like, whatever. A paycheck? Yes. Thank you very much. And it was like amazing because my job was like, I was in the room where the directors and the writers and the producers and the educational folks would like hash things out. And my job was like to like keep track of all the decisions. It was amazing. And talk about being in the room where it happens. Like I was there, and my job was just to keep track of everything and not say a word. And that was fine. It was amazing. It was an amazing opportunity to learn the different roles and to learn the aesthetic of the show. I just was a sponge. I loved it so much. And so when I was, after I'd been there for 6 months, I observed that it was like a really collaborative atmosphere. The executive producers were super open and super collaborative. And so I had an idea for a TV. I know, amazing. And I had an idea for an episode, and I I said, I have an idea for an episode. And Angela Santamero, who was the executive producer, was like, okay, write up a treatment. I was like, okay. And I did. And then she was like, okay, go write it. We're going to hire you to write this episode. So like, that was 6 months. And I was like, I was 22 and a half or something. And then 6 months later, I was on set and I had a specific job on set to like assist the directors and to like, be the second eyes and all this stuff for the directing team and make sure that all the creative decisions that we made in all those meetings were adhered to on set. And luckily, like, in my benefit, there was a couple of directors that just were like not quite hitting it out of the park. And so the executive producer said, would you want to try to direct this? Like, do you want to take a director's test? Yeah, I was 23. I was like, what are you talking about? I'm like, sure. I don't know that I would ever do that. I just didn't think that it would ever happen. And so, but sure enough, because I was so steeped in the culture and steeped in the language of the series, I was able to really, I think I was able to speak the language in a way that people from the outside may not have. Like I had real insight that other people wouldn't.
Do you think, Koyalee, we had talked about, a little bit with Come On Over and the opportunity that people had on our set at that time. Do you think a show that's been going for a few years, do you think those opportunities exist as well, rather than something that's just getting its feet off the ground?
So it's a really good question. I think that there's a lot of reasons why that specific place and time was a place where it was really ripe for new voices.
Yeah.
I think that it was New York, and New York and LA are really different in that way. New York is a little bit more like, what do you got? Like you look like you can help. Come on. Like, you have to just be really flexible and nimble about how you participate and how you show up. And LA is a little bit more regimented. I will also say there's certain things like it was, I think for a season, the staffs tend to be smaller because there's not a lot of like the budgets are lower for early seasons. Sure. And because of it, the few people that are there are required to do much more. And as the seasons go on, certainly the budgets do get a little bit bigger, but also there is that matriculation where someone who was like a lower on the totem pole in the first season gets a promotion in the second season. Yeah. So actually I would say like getting in first season, even if it's just like an assistant, is like so valuable because there are opportunities to move within. I always tell writers to get that scripting coordinator or writing assistant role, because then you're like as close to the writing as possible until you have your hands on scripts, you're listening to those notes calls and things like that. And
I also think it's about showing up. Mark or Teresa and I always say, just show up. We just show up, and you were like, yeah, I want to get into that. I'll be there, because there's no formula. We know this in this crazy business that we're in. There's no formula to getting to where you are today. Right.
Yeah. For sure.
So you showed up in a wonderful way, and those doors started to open for you.
Yeah. And and I was lucky along the way. Right. So the Wendy, who hired me on Blue's Clues, she would volunteer me for things when I wasn't even in the room, like she'd be like in a room. They're like, oh yeah, we might do this like extra live action segment. And like, we'll need a director for that. And she's like, Koyalee will do it. I wouldn't be. And she'd come back and she'd be like, I just signed you up for something. I'm like, okay, great. Because she knew that she was just like, we all need allies.
She was your champion. Yeah, that's amazing.
So amazing. I'll always be grateful. And I always want to do that for others, right? Like, it's just, I take a lot of informational interviews just because I just am so grateful for people who did that for me,
Good for you.
It's like really important to me.
Yeah, you've done that with us. We appreciate it.
Yeah, of course. You recently did that with us.
I did. No, exactly. I mean, just look, it's like it's a
so
relationship.
You stayed in the directing world. So you ended up in the directing world. So that was primarily where you
I did. I for the first part of my career, I worked as a live action director for all kids content. So, which is like, frankly, live action kids, there's not a ton, at least in New York. Like, there was a lot of like promos and interstitials and like little short films for Sesame Street. I did a couple films for them.
I'm just remembering that you did like On the Street kind of thing.
Yes.
Right?
Also, there was there was a segment on Sesame Street. The first minute was called "What's the Word on the Street," and it was with this Muppet called Murray. And so it was a vocabulary section segment, and be like, "What's the word on the street? The word on the street is unanimous." And like, "What's unanimous?" And he would like interview random people on the street, and they would like try to. And with all the interviews, we'd piece together an edit that would like get the whole definition across. So we had like kids and families, and and just like it was a real fun, really
so
fun.
Cute.
Yeah. Like nothing is more fun than being on the streets of New York with a Muppet. And like Murray was the Muppet, and like he's like Elmo if Elmo like fell on hard times. And so people would like be like, yo Elmo. I'm like, actually it's Murray. Like it's not like
And amazing how, I mean, we were talking about this with Lisa, just how people talk to the puppet. Like they don't see the person with the puppet ever.
Yeah,
It's just
amazing.
Such a bizarre medium.
It's amazing. And as a director, sometimes, and this is, I just love the puppeteers so much. They're so phenomenally talented, like Lisa. And, but sometimes they would stay in character when I gave them notes. So I'm like giving notes to a puppet. I'm like, hey, okay, when you did that thing, he's like, yeah, I screwed that up, didn't I? I'm like, yeah, you kind of did. Like, can you just wait a beat before you enter? He's like, oh, okay, Koyalee, thank you. Like, and then like, this is my job.
And they're in it. I mean, I feel like there's no pretense. There's no like we're trying to be jokey and funny. I feel like this is just they're inhabiting the world. It's so fascinating. So then so you've spent so much time in this directing world. Yeah. What made you do the transition to this other side?
It's a really good question. I think that so in television directing, at least what in the content and the spaces that I was in, a lot of the creative is established far longer before the director was handed the script. And so I had a couple of opportunities where or a couple of jobs, frankly, that the creative wasn't really that strong. And like, that was really hard because it wasn't my job to make a creative better. It was just my job to execute it. And I think I knew that as like a creative, as a person, like I couldn't do that. It just wasn't me, So, and I realized that actually having more producer role, I'm in earlier in the process and like really shaping the creative. And so that actually shaped the following like several years of my career because I got an opportunity to produce the pilot for Odd Squad. So I didn't actually produce the series Odd Squad, but I did produce the pilot with the two creators, Adam Peltzman and Tim McKeown. And we shot it in New York and it was like amazing because we sold the show. Like we made a pilot and we sold the show and it was great. And I wasn't directing. And like we had this amazing director named Ryan McFall. He's just phenomenal. He went on to do Amy Schumer's show and all that stuff. He's super talented.
Oh, how fun.
Yeah, really cool. He's super talented. And so and I just realized like that the ability to have like that big picture was really appealing to me without having to be like in the weeds and not having to like prep for the kind of prep that you need to do for a director is so different. And I really loved it. And so from there, I then went on to produce Wallykazam with Adam Peltzman, who was also a co-creator on Odd Squad, created Wallykazam. And so I came on as a producer. I never really produced animation before, but I learned a ton and it just made me realize that like I love this idea of like that. I kept pulling back from the nitty gritty. And so then the next step was to try to really do more development work and kind of see if I could try my hand as an executive, like have multiple shows or multiple series, multiple projects for a specific platform or for a specific buyer that might have an identity mandate in the landscape. Because at that point, I just learned so much about what's out there and the content that is there and the content that works and the content that doesn't. And so I was luckily I was able to really get that experience. And that eventually brought me to Los Angeles.
And that is as you're kind of sharing your story here, I'm like, you hear the some development execs don't have a good reputation or have, maybe that's not the right word, but have a,
spammer.
Yeah, here comes the spam. Just get rid of him.
That's my dad. Just kidding.
don't understand the process as much. Like you hear sometimes you hear creatives go, that development exec, they put the kibosh on this because they don't understand this. So I don't know how much that's true. That's something that I've heard. What I'm curious about, or what I find fascinating, is I feel like what a gift you must be to that development process, because I used to tell kids when they were getting into theater, do every single job in theater.
Yeah,
like if you want to direct in theater, do every single job.
Yeah.
Help costumes, help
Totally.
And if you do that, you're going to be much stronger at the end of the day, because you're going to understand how all the pieces fit. And so clearly, do you feel unique?
It's interesting
to your job.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think that, and this is what I subscribe to, being like a New York starting my career in New York versus LA, because I think in New York I was able to do a lot of different types of jobs for a lot of different types of content and buyers and production companies and all that stuff, because you just have to be nimble and more flexible in New York. You just have to keep reinventing yourself, because
yeah.
And I think in New York they just have to be more scrappy, and the jack of all trades. LA is, because the industry is so big in LA, the pathways are much more striated, and they're much more there's different lanes. And I don't blame any development executive who may not have the production experience, because frankly, the path to becoming a development executive in LA is very much like an assistant to a coordinator to a junior exec, junior creative exec. And so there isn't really, it's a different path. And that is the path, that is the more sure path to becoming a development executive in LA. And so what I did was much more circuitous, and I was frankly much later in my career when I made that jump. And look, it's what I love, and you do see people kind of go from being an exec to being a producer, or being to being an exec, and I think there is a flexibility there. So and maybe that is something I may do as well. But I think what's I've been really what I don't have is, I don't have the years and years and years of working in a development organization. I have not done development for years and years and years.
Right.
So there's something that I'm still
those
learning,
are the challenges that you face.
Exactly.
Yeah. Exactly. Interesting.
Though I can look at a piece of animation, and the way I approach it, or the way I give notes, or the way I I know the process well enough that I know how to give the right feedback at the right time, so that's something I can do.
Well, that goes back to working with actors and knowing how to read people. And I mean, I think everybody should have a theater degree, personally, because your undergrad or what it is, it just gives you so many tools in your career tool basket, just to know how to work with people.
100%.
So I want to ask you, we don't have that much more time. I want to ask you, with what you're doing today, and if you can just tell a little bit about what that is, and also, do you have much creative input in what you're doing?
I do have a bat on my wall. My husband made it. He's a artist as well as being a lawyer. Yeah, it's string, actually. It's string art.
He's a needlepoint artist.
Oh, really? Oh my God, yeah. Kevin. Let's connect. We can talk thread count. So what am I? So I'm a VP of Kids and Animation for Hello Sunshine, which is the company that Reese Witherspoon started in 2016. And her goal was to change the narrative for women through content. And she has done they have done a phenomenal job putting content out there that show women, really interesting, complex women characters, multiple female characters in a given project, a given series. And it's and just about 2 years ago, the company decided to delve into kids content, led by my boss and dear friend Claire Curley. And so we have taken that mission to a younger audience. So how do you put girls in the center of every story, show these characters that have agency and are empowered and don't look at others to solve their problems. And also, what are those things that girls are specific to girls, frankly, like in terms of what needs resetting or redefining, or like what are the messages that we have been all sending sort of subconsciously or consciously to our girls, and how can we reset that? Like, I mean, I think that there is in general, like girls aren't really encouraged to take risks. And why is that? I think there is also this myth of perfectionism because, like a lot of women don't want to try things they might fail at. And
have you learned stuff then in this process? Is there anything you've learned and went, oh gosh, I have to stop this with my own daughters, or I have to do
for
this
sure. We identified certain areas of development that we want to focus on for our content, and all of these things are like another one was a social comparison, like how you compare yourself to others. There is also just like this encouragement of trying to encourage all kids, all humans, to really know themselves and speak from that voice.
Wow.
Yeah. And validating feelings. That's that's just sort of like that's part of you, your emotions. How many times are women told that they're too emotional? Right. And like, I think that what I try to tell my kids is like, your feelings are your body telling you that how your body feels about something. Like, that's what feelings are. And like, I'm glad you have feelings, because then we know, and then we can like, kind of like look at what's going on. And it's really, I mean, I do think we're in a
that's really
now. Yeah, sorry.
That's really great, because not only for women, men shouldn't have any emotions either, right?
Oh,
Boys.
Yeah.
So that's so
don't even get
great
me started. Yeah, that's the whole other thing.
That you're addressing that situation. Teresa and I've been talking, and don't give anything away, but Mark and I just discovered Ted Lasso. And so looking at the anxiety issue, and how many kids deal with that and stuff it, and just
especially now. I mean, I think that the anxiety level in
I can't even imagine for your girls. Like it's like I was walking through the grocery store, and you've got these 5-year-old kids, and I'm like, they don't even know what people look like. They don't.
I know.
Well, depending on where you are, here in Florida, they know what people look like. But I'm in Florida today. I'll be back in LA where kids don't know what people look like because they're all wearing masks.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's such a strange new world. Well, it's interesting because you don't have like humanitarian on your bio or anything like that, but it sure feels like you're doing some level of humanitarian work through your through your stuff. You know what I mean? Just the way you talk about it and the mission and the goals. It feels like the little girl who didn't want to go to Broadway because she wanted to have a deeper impact found her happy place.
Yeah. I mean, that's such a lovely way of putting it. I do think that when you make kids content, you never forget who you're really serving. And because of that, it always keeps you honest. And, it's not for the fame or certainly the money.
Right.
It's wanting to reach kids and inspire them and engage. And so when that's the goal, it's really, it is humanitarian.
Yeah.
It fundamentally is. And like, for me, when it comes to, as you said, Teresa, like impact, it's like, how do I didn't want to have narrow impact. I wanted to reach I wanted to have wider impact, and like all of a sudden I was on this show, Blue's Clues, that had like, there's an episode that I directed that had 20 million viewers, like that one, the Steve Goes to College episode, which I directed. Like,
wow,
it's crazy. And then like now, I don't know if you've been noticing, like all the Steve is like blowing up because everyone is like, I need Steve right now because I'm 25 and freaking out,
That's just amazing. It's amazing to think you had 20 million views on that. I mean, like, people would kill for 20 million views today.
Oh, one night. I mean, it was a Steve Goes to College.
Yeah. I mean, I even know the episode. I guess I didn't remember that you directed it. I remember that. And I remember the buzz around it. And I remember, Yeah.
It was an honor. I mean, what a privilege to have that in my hands, and to be given that, to say, okay, we trust you to take care of this. And, obviously Steve he's beyond talented, and his ability to connect is beyond. So it was an honor, honestly.
Did you go beyond after Steve left, or were you already?
Yeah, I helped find his replacement, Joe.
Oh, did you?
Donovan
Did you?
Patton. Yeah, he's so great. He was so great in a different way, just like heart on his sleeve, really genuine, sweetheart. Yeah. So I'm not involved with the reboot, but I did go through almost 6 seasons of Blue's Clues.
It's amazing.
100 and something episodes.
We're so past time.
I know.
Oh my God, I'm so sorry.
No, it's great. I'm like, oh my gosh. What do you hope? I mean, I guess you're in the throes of what you hope next. It sounds like you can't tell us what you're hoping for next. But you have exciting things coming down the pike, right?
We do, yeah. So we have a few things down the pike. We have a couple of projects that have not been announced, and a couple more right behind it. I am hoping that through the content, people see it. It's a cluttered landscape, right?
Yeah.
So it's hard to stand out. But I hope that it moves kids. I hope that kids discover the content and understand and feel good about themselves when they watch it. So if that happens, that's the win, right? Kids feel empowered
so great
by watching TV,
Yeah.
This is wonderful, Koyalee. This was just a joy to have you, and just so grateful for our time working together, and that, we've kept in touch, which is really amazing, because that doesn't always happen. And Come On Over created that, and I'm thankful for that. So thankful for your openness and your willingness to hear from us, and also to be on our show tonight.
And excited for you to see what's coming. Really excited to see what gets birthed out of that passion and that vision and that mission. I'm really excited for girls and for everyone. So you're doing good work, lady. Little playwright. You little 3-year-old playwright.
I know.
Thank you so much. Honestly, thank you, both of you, for just bringing so much joy in everything you do. And always, talk about mission. Like, you guys have been consistently, as long as I've known you, which is now many, many years, like, I'm so moved by how incredibly heart-filled everything you do, every effort, everything you put out in the world is just so positive and optimistic and celebratory. So thank you both for everything you do.
Thank you,
Koyalee.
Thank you so much.
Jeannie thanks you too.
Well, thanks, Jeannie.
Thank you for all you shared with us. So
thanks, Jeannie.
All right. Thanks,
we're going to send you to the green room, Koyalee.
All right.
Don't run away.
Thank you so much for spending your evening with us.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Bye.
What a gem.
Another one that it was like we could go on and on and on and on.
Know.
It was just like
boom, it's 8:48.
I know.
It's insane. It's insane. And we didn't even get to all of our questions. This is why I like doing this, because we just get to have really wonderful, what a deep and meaningful conversation with Koyalee. I love where these go. So,
and I love that our viewers piped in and gave their 2 cents and enjoyed it as well. So next month is creative couples for the month of Valentine's. And we'll announce next week who we've got lined up.
That's right, because we're still confirming the actual dates with everybody.
Yes, we are.
So
playing a little chess move around.
Chess, moving some.
But it's fun, the people that are coming, so it'll be great. Yep. So as we always say,
gotta go.
Have a good night.
Gotta go.